Hello and welcome back. Let's quickly talk about static block and non-static block. Sometimes it is confusing for some pupils, so we're gonna demystify this two terms. If you haven't watched the video about learning static members and non-static members, I recommend you first watch that video, and this video is gonna be easier for you. So beside the other members like data members or methods of a class, we can have blocks inside the class. Two types of blocks mainly, and they serve different purposes. We have static block and non-static block. If I quickly create a Java class, let me call it a student again. We have a simple class. Inside this class we can have different members, methods, variables, etc. Beside that we can have a block, two type of block, a static block and non-static block. Okay, we can define a static block by providing the static keyword, static, and the block. We can define it using these two curly braces. This is called the static block. It belongs to the class itself, not to a specific object. Before that, let's say if I have a string, maybe name of the student, and let's have a static member, a static, let's give it a string, maybe a school name. And also let's say we want to keep track of how many objects are created inside our program, how many objects of a student type is created inside our program. We can have a static maybe integer for that, static int, let's call it count. So we said that the static members belong to the class. They are created once in the memory and they're shared among all the instances of the classes. Whereas the non-static or instance member or variables, they belong to object of the class, and we have a separate version or copy of the non-static members for each object. Okay, that's why each object can take different values for these non-static members, but for static members all the objects share the same value. Okay, the same way static blocks belong to the class. A static block belongs to the class. If I put a comment out here, so remember this, it doesn't belong to object, and we can it gets executed automatically when the class is loaded at the memory. Okay, when the class is loaded at the memory, it gets executed only once. Okay, remember that, once when the class is loaded at the memory. Why we use this static block? We can use it to instantiate or initialize our static member variables. We can access static methods from within this block and static variables, but we cannot access non-static members. I cannot access name from here, but I can access static string name, school name, and count. Okay, if I have static methods, I can access that from a static block. Why we use it? For initializing of initialization, maybe for initializing our static members. Say I want to initialize, if I put it private here, maybe I can initialize it here, say school name equal to maybe University of XYZ, and I want to initialize my static count equal to 0 initially. We don't have any objects so far created. So this is the purpose of a static block. It gets executed first before everything, before even the main method get execute. It gets executed the moment the class is loaded at the memory. Okay, why we use it? We use it for example, for initializing some static variables. We also have a non-static block, or maybe call it instance block. It's used for instance initialization. Here we have a non-static block. We can just define it using the curly braces. It is used to initialize or assign values to our member variables or non-static member variables. So here I can access, say, name equal to, for example, unknown. Okay. So when this is getting executed, it belongs to object of the each class. So whenever we create an object of a student type, when we ever instantiate an object, this block gets executed for every object, run once for each object. Also remember that it runs before the constructor. We can have a constructor for our student class, public student constructor. We know the constructor gets called or executed at the time of the object instantiation, or whenever we say new and we call the new keyword, we call the constructor, it gets executed whatever is inside the constructor. Say I want to just s out constructor got executed, and here I want to just print s out maybe static block got executed, and here I want to just print non-static block got executed. It's out non-static block got executed. Okay, so let's see which block got executed first. As I said, it's gonna get executed at the beginning of the class load, and this gets executed for each object instantiation, and this also get executed for all object creation. When we say new student, when we call the constructor, this gets executed. If I go inside main, if I print something here, let's say main method started, I don't want to do anything, I don't want to create any object. So what do you guys think the output would be? So first, before everything, this block gets executed, a static block. Then the main method will get executed. So let's run that. See, main method got created, main method started. If I go inside the student, the static block executed. So when I create an object of this new student, let's create it here, maybe student, let's call it S1. We want to load the class to the memory, new student. So now what do you guys think? What would be the output? See, main method got executed. So if I put it here, let's say, and let's say static block got executed first, then the non-static block got executed first, and the constructor. Okay, then the main method executing. So that is the difference between a static block and non-static block. If we have another class, for example, let's see, the order of execution, I want to create a test class here, and I want to clear everything from the main method. Let's see, I want to have a constructor for here. Let's say public test, and if I just print here constructor, right, I can have a static block for this static. I can execute some code here. For example, if I print here static block, and if I have non-static block, I can do that as out if we run non-static block, and inside the main I can create objects of these two object of this class, maybe create some objects and see what the flow of the execution is gonna be. Okay, so let's go ahead and create, I'll say maybe test t1 equal to new test. Let's see. So first the static block gets executed, second the non-static block, and then the constructor. Okay, so that is the flow of execution. Before everything, the static block gets executed. If we have any initialization to initialize any static member, we can do it here, and the non-static block gets executed then. If we have initialization or setup for our non-static members, we can do it here, and then the constructor, we can have different overload of the constructor. Depending on what constructor we call from the main, that constructor gets executed, right? So thank you guys for watching, and see you in the next video. Bye bye.